What's up, my friend? Abby here, and welcome back to Writer's Life Wednesdays, where we come together to help you make your story matter. It's Preptober, and if you saw last week's video, you know that I'm doing a new series in preparation for NaNoWriMo 2019. We are outlining our novels together, which means you are going to look over my shoulder and watch my Preptober process real time. This is the first official episode in the Preptober series, and we're going to begin the right way by creating and developing our characters. But first, I'm going to give you a little run through of my Scrivener and show you how I set everything up for success and how to nail down the theme of your story so that you have a clear focus going forward into your outlining and writing process. Let's go. Okay, so first things first, I'm going to show you how I set up my Scrivener. Now, I did a whole video on this very in-depth last year, so if you want to check that out for something more in-depth, definitely watch that video, but I'm going to run through it real quick just to refresh everybody's minds and get us all on the same page, no pun intended. So here is my Scrivener template setup. My pre-write task list, let's start there. Pre-write task list is basically just all the things that come to mind, all the random floating bits of ideas and things that I have to resolve before I sit down to write the first draft. My manuscript, I always break down into 3 different folders, separate sections, which are my acts. And we're gonna talk about the 3-act story structure later in this series. So this is just a nice way to organize things and make sure that I always know what part of my book is where. Just makes things easier to locate later on. Then I have obviously my character folder. So this is the template that we're gonna be using today and dissecting. So I know it looks like a lot right now, but it's gonna make sense. That's for the main character, this is for the side characters. These are the templates that I use, and actually I put them in my template sheets folder or just copy paste them from another document, and you can download these templates. They're in the description box below. They're also in the resource hub on my Patreon. And next we have the most important folder, the outlines. So I begin every book outline with a brain dump, which I obviously blacked out because I don't want you to know what's in my brain. Come on. My brain dump is basically everything all the ideas I have for a story before I start plotting it. So just the random bits of information go into this brain dump. So needless to say, it is very messy. Next thing I'm gonna outline is the 3-act story structure, and we're gonna talk about the 3-act story structure next week, so stay tuned for that. The week after that is the long outline where I'm gonna go in depth, in detail, and just flesh out everything like super crazy beginning to end. And after that, we have scene cards. You're like, can we get any more detailed than this? Yes, we can, and we do with scene cards. Scene cards are amazing, and if you haven't seen my video on scene cards, definitely check that out, but we are going to go into it the last week of Preptober. We're gonna dig into scene cards and what they look like, why they work so amazingly well. And what I've done here is change the little icons so that the manuscript acts will match the ones in the scene card outline, and that just makes it easier for me to navigate later on. I also have a folder for settings, which is where I just write sketches of what a setting may feel like, or maybe pictures. Okay, so I have a research folder which has nothing in it because I don't really know what I'm gonna be researching for this book, if anything. It's mostly contemporary, takes place in the real world, but if I have to research anything, it will go in this folder. And last but not least, I have notes. So anything that I'm not sure where to put it, I put it in my notes folder because I know that I'll always find my random stuff in my notes folder. So the first document I always make is styles. Styles is the writing style. Okay, so I like, obviously my writing style is going to be kind of the same across the board of whatever I write, but I like to give every book like a special flair. So things that will come to my mind that I'm like, oh, that would be cool to have like this recurring theme or line or phrase or element that just happens throughout the book. So I obviously blacked out most of it because it's a surprise. Next up we have themes. I'm gonna talk about themes in a minute, so I'm not gonna talk about them right now, but that is very important. And then I have subplots, and I talked about subplots in my other Scrivener organization video, so definitely check that out if you wanna see what a subplot document actually looks like in my Scrivener. What I do is I just figure out each side character's plot, because that to me is what a subplot is. I usually begin each subplot description with the side character's name. Like so-and-so is going to do this, have this impact on the main character, learn this as a result of their journey. Details to remember, this is also, again, just random stuff that I think of throughout the brainstorming process that I don't really know where to put. I just know that I need to remember it. Rating is also something that I create like this little template at the beginning of my writing process, and then I don't really touch it until after the book is done, after the book is edited really, and then during the editing process, I look at the content of the book and I decide what age bracket do I want this content to be appealing to, and did I push it out of that age bracket because of some of the content. So that helps me to just kind of look at it objectively and not in the context of the book. And then I can figure out by looking at the isolated content what I want to remove or keep in or edit. The blurb is something that you might want to write before you write the book, or you might want to write it after you write the book. I prefer to write mine before I write the book just because it keeps me focused on what is the actual point of the story, and am I hitting like the most important parts of the story I want to tell. It's creating that little blueprint before you begin your journey. So I'm gonna talk about blurbs in the future. I know I've said that for a long time, but I'm planning something really great, really great with book blurbs. So keep an eye out for that. And last but not least, I have a soundtracks document, which is something that brings me a lot of joy to do, is just create a playlist that is what I imagine the soundtrack of the book to be. And finally, I have my template sheets. And in my template sheets folder, I really just have one template that I use, and that is the scene card. So we're gonna talk about the scene card in the weeks to come. In the last week of Preptober, we're gonna talk about the scene card, and it's gonna be great. But these template sheets, this template folder, you can put anything in this template folder. And when you go to add a document anywhere in your Scrivener, click on this little plus sign and the drop-down menu, and your template documents will be right there. So that's what's really helpful about the template folder, is that you can just go to the plus sign and create as many as you want, wherever you want, without having to do all this copying and pasting. So it's really helpful. So that is my Scrivener template. You can actually download my Scrivener template plus all the templates and PDFs that we're going to talk about today when you join my Patreon at any level. Okay, there's a resource hub with tons of helpful templates, plus this Scrivener setup, exactly how I showed it to you just now. So go grab that. That's at patreon.com/Abbie Emmons. Okay, so let's go back to the character folder, and oh, there's my aesthetics. I'm so happy with them. Just, you know, stole them off of Pinterest, but it's good to put a face to the character in your head if you like that. And yeah, it's super fun to add these aesthetics to the corkboard and just get like more of a visual for your story. So the characters are where the outlining process begins for me, okay? Because like I always say, story is not about what happens, it's about how what happens affects and transforms the characters. You remember a story not because of the stuff that happened. You remember a story because of the journey that the characters went on internally and the truth that they learned about the world. That's what story was originally invented to be, not an entertainment device, not something to just distract us for a few hours of our life. No, it was actually invented to mean something, to impart truth to us, to help us avoid pain and danger, to enlighten us, to better understand ourselves and others. Which brings us to the real step one, finding your story's truth. Otherwise known as the theme or the message, but I like to use the word truth because it just feels better in my mind. What is your story's truth? I know last week I said that we would begin with characters, but nailing your theme is really the most important thing to do before you even touch your characters. Why? Because your characters are going to learn the truth as a result of their journey, which means they're going to have an internal transformation, which means they're going to begin the story believing a lie. And knowing what that lie or misbelief is going to be the most important part of your character profile. So let's begin there. Let's begin with your theme, your story's truth, and I'll show you how to reverse engineer it into an irresistible internal conflict for your main character. Ask yourself, what truth do you want to write a story about? Take that truth and reverse it to make it a lie. This is your protagonist's lie or misbelief. And the truth is what they're going to realize as a result of their journey. Of course, their journey is going to be external for the most part, but the only thing that makes external events riveting is how they affect the internal state of the protagonist. Here's an example of what this looks like. Truth, you are valuable. Lie, you are worthless. Story, character discovers their sense of self-worth as a result of their journey. So take a minute to ask yourself these questions and really hone in on the theme of your story. If you want to go more in-depth on story theme, definitely check out this video. Here's my theme for my nano novel. I actually have several, and you might have several too, which is totally fine. Just make sure you have an overarching theme that is kind of the priority theme and gets the most attention. That's what you're going to build your protagonist's internal conflict on, okay? So my themes are: don't judge a person based on their outward appearance. Always show kindness to the people around you, even if they don't seem to need or deserve any. Family isn't just who you're married to and who you share a house with, it's who you truly value in your life, the people you have a real connection and relationship with, the people you couldn't live without. So there's a couple there. But the most important one is don't judge a person based on their outward appearance. That's like the biggest overarching theme. And what I actually do with my themes is take the vague idea and expound on it, describing in detail how I'm going to show the reader this theme in the story itself. I would totally recommend doing this as well, but you don't have to do it first unless you want to. The only thing that you really need before you dive into creating your characters is your story's overarching truth that you want to scream from the rooftops. And what that truth looks like when you reverse it, make it a lie, and make your protagonists believe it with their whole heart. Okay, so that being said, let's dive into the character profile. My character profile, my ultimate character profile template, is basically made up of 3 parts. No nonsense questionnaire, a character therapy session, and backstory. You can jump around within this character profile template, but if this is your first time using it, I would recommend going through it beginning to end, because I actually designed it to be like a natural conversation that you might have with your characters, starting shallow and ending up way down in the deep end. That's why I call it a therapy session, because we start off all chill, like, hi, what's your name? How old are you? And we end like, what's the childhood traumatic event that changed the way you see yourself and everyone else in the world? But first, let's begin with the basics. The basics are obviously your character's name, their role in the story, so protagonist, antagonist, love interest, side character, physical description, age, MBTI personality type. If you're not a fan of MBTI, you can use something else like Enneagram. I usually do both, but it's good to know your character's personality type so that you can better shape how they'll react in certain situations. And the internal questions. What is his or her greatest fear? We kind of already figured that out when we figured out what their misbelief was. So if you figured out the theme and reverse engineered it to be a character lie, then you pretty much can build off of that to know what your character is afraid of. And then what is his or her misbelief about the world? That's where you're gonna put the reverse engineered theme. What is the best thing in his or her life? What is the worst thing in his or her life? What does he or she most often look down on people for? You can usually find that in the personality type if you're at a loss for what this should be. What makes his or her heart feel alive? What makes him or her feel loved, and who is the last person to make them feel that way? Top 3 things he or she values most in life. And the external and kind of fun questions are: what's his or her favorite book, movie, and band? Is there an object he or she can't bear to part with, and why? Describe a typical outfit for him or her from top to bottom. That's just really handy to have for your mental image purposes. What names or nicknames has he or she been called throughout their life? What is his or her method of manipulation? So this one is kind of fun because it can be lots of different things. Just Google it. How do people manipulate you? Pair it with your character's personality and create just a more dynamic social experience for them. Describe his or her daily routine. This is also so helpful when you need to write some kind of transition or something that your character is doing and you realize, what do they do all day? I don't even know. So good to figure that out beforehand. Their go-to cure for a bad day. I love this too because it's kind of like the routine, but it's like their comfort food routine. Your character is going to be forced into so many uncomfortable situations throughout the course of your story. All they're going to want to do is go to their go-to cure for a bad day and try to make everything right in the world again, but they're not gonna because you're an evil author and you're not gonna let them do that. So that's just a little extra pain, icing on top. Okay, so now we've arrived at the therapy session portion of this, the character goals. A character is nothing without a goal. It's the map that leads them on their journey throughout this story, and it's what keeps your reader reading. So here's how I figure out my character goals based on their desires, fears, and misbelief. Basically, you're gonna go through this section of the questionnaire imagining that you're having a fun little therapy session with your characters. Yes, you can literally take these questions and make them second person and ask your character. I've done this, literally asked these questions out loud as if my character is sitting in front of me. No, I'm not crazy. Okay, maybe just a little. So sit your character down on an imaginary sofa and ask them these questions. How are you dissatisfied with your life? What do you think will bring you true happiness or contentment? What definitive step could you take to turn your dream into a reality? How has your fear kept you from taking this action already? How do you feel you can accomplish your goal while still steering clear of the thing you're afraid of? By the time you're done listening to your characters spill their guts, you should have some awesome material to work with. This is literally so good that you could actually stop there, but we're not going to. We're gonna go even further and dive into your character's dark and scary backstory. Backstory is one of the most important things to write for your character because it is where your character's misbelief originally came from. Everything you believe and know to be true is really just an accumulation of your past experiences, which have impacted your emotions and your moods and your habits and your personality and yes, your actual biology. Kinda scary, but don't get distracted thinking about yourself. Let's think about your protagonist. More specifically, let's explore what happened in their past to create this misbelief that they believe with their whole heart today. There's a reason why we believe what we believe. During the downloading stages of our youth, we accepted something as true, even if it wasn't. This experience could be something traumatic or highly emotional, but it might not even be some big single emotional event. It might be just a small reassurance that we believe only because we've been exposed to it again and again and again in small doses. But if you can pin down a specific moment in your character's past when they started to believe this lie, all the better. Why? Because we're gonna write that scene. So let's go back to that example of the truth lie story that we worked out earlier. In my video on theme, I used this same truth lie as the example, and our traumatic event that sparked this misbelief of you are worthless for our example protagonist was a moment in their past when they were abandoned by their parents at a young age. Pretty traumatic. So think about your character's misbelief and decide what highly emotional or traumatic event could have happened in their past to create and foster such a misbelief. You might already have this backstory scene floating around in your head. It might even be a really essential part of your story, and even better if it is, because that's really your end goal, is to make your reader see why this character is the way they are and why everything matters to them. So here are the questions for the backstory section. The backstory scene that changed everything is the scene where, and you're gonna fill in the blank with your scene, what does your character go into the scene believing and how are they surprised by the outcome? How does your character struggle to hold on to their old beliefs? And what is their conclusion, their new belief? So once you figure out what your protagonist's pivotal moment in their backstory is going to be, write it. And then look for moments in your protagonist's past up until this moment where they acted upon their misbelief again and again and again. I've said this before and I'll say it again. What really creates our personalities and our beliefs is not so much that something happened to us one time. It's that we've psychologically experienced this event over and over and over again. We broke this down in my backstory video a long time ago, why you should really go through your character's past and find those events, at least 3 of them, where a situation pushed your character outside their comfort zone and gave them 2 options: act upon your misbelief or act upon the truth. And they chose their misbelief every single time, just further cementing it as a truth to them. Now it's so deeply ingrained in their brain, it's a habit and it's part of their identity. So if you have the time, write at least 3 more scenes from your character's backstory in chronological order where they acted upon their misbelief again and again and again. So boom, that's the character questionnaire for your main character or any character that's getting major screen time. You might do it for your antagonist as well, or if you have another main character. But you don't have to fill out this whole character questionnaire for all your side characters. In fact, that would be a major waste of time because you're never gonna be delving that deep into all of your side characters' internal journeys, unless your book is like hundreds of thousands of words long, which it might be. But for most people, you don't wanna do that. This is a story about your protagonist, okay? Not your side characters. They do have lives of their own and stories of their own, but they don't take center stage. So I've created a side character version of this character questionnaire that only explores the need to know stuff so that you can create powerful side characters that don't steal the show. So here's what that template looks like. We have the character's name, their role in the story, physical description, age, MBTI personality type, or any other personality type you want to do, backstory. And for the backstory, you can do just like a really brief rundown of like who they are, where they came from, their family situation, etc. What is his or her greatest fear? What is his or her misbelief about the world? What happened in the character's past to create this misbelief? What is his or her agenda? And the top 3 things he or she values most in life. So this is designed, the greatest fear, the misbelief about the world. You can give them fears and misbeliefs about the world, but we're not gonna like go into a whole total transformation internal journey for this side character because they're not the main character. But their fears and their misbeliefs and their little revelations off to the side can also help to enhance the revelations and the aha moments of the main character. So now I'm gonna shut up and jump back into my Scrivener project for my book and create my characters. I'm gonna fill out the big character profile questionnaire thing for my protagonist, Jenny, and maybe for my anti-hero character, because he's kind of a big part of it. I might just do the little outline, the side character outline for him, even though he's not really gonna be a side character. He's way more prominent than a side character. And then I'm definitely gonna do the side character profiles for all my side characters. I forgot to even tell you what my story was about because I was rambling too much about Scrivener and psychology and story and character profiles. So I literally changed my mind like 3 times. I was all ready to write a fantasy book, and like high fantasy, like kings and queens and dragons and magic. It's gonna be awesome. I'm still gonna write it, but probably a little bit more slow paced throughout the winter instead of all at once. And then I was like, oh, I have this other idea for this other contemporary book that is amazing, but I feel like it's not quite all there yet. Like not all the plot is figured out, but this book kind of just came out of my memory, and I've literally been like plotting it in my head for like 5 years. I think it was literally like 5 years ago that I had the idea, maybe even longer than that. Pretty crazy. It's been with me for a long time, and I finally decided this NaNoWriMo, I'm gonna write it. And it is a cute contemporary YA about high school and crushes and bullies and donuts and cats and finding yourself and your self-worth. Lots of really cool, empowering themes about anti-bullying and anti-cyberbullying and finding your confidence and discovering your self-esteem. Oh, it's gonna be so good. I'm very excited for this book. I need to go and make those character profiles now because now I'm just gonna sit here and rant about it. So let's do that right now. Okay, so I am pretty happy with what I have so far. I've fleshed out pretty much everything for my protagonist and my anti-hero character. All my side characters have their initial profile in there. I'm probably gonna add a little bit more to theirs. My protagonist's mom, who is a big impact on the story, her character profile is really good, just nailed it. Best friend is pretty much done. It's coming really well. The only thing I'm really missing is like the pivotal moment backstory scene for my protagonist. And like I said before, it doesn't have to be like this big emotional traumatic thing that happened one time, as much as it can be like smaller things over time. So I think that might be the case for this protagonist. Probably gonna figure out at least one scene, one or two, maybe three if I have time, backstory scenes that I can write with those little subtle misbeliefs thrown in there. So I'm going to work on my character profiles more this week, obviously iron out all the wrinkles. And if you want my character profile templates, awesome. They are all available in the description box below this video. The link will be super obvious. You can print them off or fill them out by hand or copy and paste them into your Scrivener. Okay, that's our nano prep for this week. And like I said, I'm gonna be working on these character profiles throughout the rest of this week and probably adding to them here and there throughout the rest of October. Next week, we're going to get to the actual outlining process. So taking our character profiles and combining them with the 3-act story structure. I'll explain what the 3-act story structure is and why it works so well for any genre book you're writing. And then I'll take my protagonist's journey and see how it fits in that layout, in that structure of the 3-act story structure. And that will produce the real first outline for this book. That's next week. It's going to be awesome. So make sure you're subscribed and make sure you hit the bell icon so that you get notified when I release that video. Comment below and tell me, how is your Preptober going? And if you used these templates, let me know how it went. What was your favorite part of the template? And what was your favorite part of the character creation process? Smash that like button if you liked this video, and be sure to check out my Patreon, because that's where we go beyond videos and take storytelling to the next level. The Patreon community is not only the best way to support what I'm doing here on YouTube, but also connect personally with me and get better guidance on your story. And it's where you get those cool templates, all of them, plus my Scrivener setup. So go to patreon.com/Abbie Emmons and check out all the awesome extra content that I've made for you. Until next week, my friend, rock on. Shh.